Smells good here. Nice and woody.
Welcome everybody. If we can try and maintain distance between groups, that would be wonderful.
All right, that was good. That was about 6 feet. Everybody's got it. Yeah, we're all pros out of these.
Welcome everybody to Great Lakes Distillery, first distillery in Wisconsin since Prohibition. Pretty casual tour we got going on here for you today. We're gonna have some fun, do some drinking. We're gonna head back up to the AC after about a half hour down here and taste a bunch of booze. I'm Brendan, by the way. Feel free to ask questions after each little section we cover. I'll open up the questions. If there's anything you want to know in great detail, please feel free to ask. We're an open book around here. Happy to share anything with you about the company. But like I said, we'll do some talking about how booze is made, and then we'll go do some booze drinking. But before we get to production, I'd like to start you guys out with a brief history of our company, how we started out, how we got to this point. It all starts out with our owner and founder, Guy Rayhorst. He just walked upstairs right now. He's here 7 out of 7 days of the week, very hands-on with the company. No job's too small around here for him. You name it, he's ready to do it. How Guy got involved in this business. Back in 2002, Guy sold a portion of a company he started in the 90s, and that was Great Lakes Media. They were duplicating CD-ROMs and DVDs. Right? Guy saw the writing on the wall, kind of a dying business, sold his portion of that. Spent a year or two at home making beer, making wine, home distillations, not legal, so he never partook in that. We're on the same page there. That's how you get your start at that. But as legend goes, Guy sitting at a bar in Milwaukee in 2004. He looks, he sees every beer on tap is from Wisconsin. Not one spirit was. So he thought, that's ridiculous. We should have our own booze. We're a drinking state. We need booze from the state. So he went about doing it. It only took him about 6 months to get the product ready to market, but it took him 2 years to be able to sell it. Reason being, he calls up tax revenue in Madison and says, hey, I'm gonna start selling liquor. They said, no, you're not. We don't know how to tax you. We haven't taxed the distillery since Prohibition went into effect in 1920 in Wisconsin. That was the last time that a distillery had been functioning, legally selling booze. So, Guy kind of was the pioneer to get that snowballing. Every state's had to have somebody independently go through and kind of push that process, right? Laws don't get changed unless somebody wants them to be changed. So Guy was that person in Wisconsin. He's done all kinds of things to help lobby for certain causes when it comes to booze. When we originally opened up here, we couldn't even do tastings on site. Guy helped get that law changed. That was a big thing. We couldn't do tastings at grocery stores and liquor stores in the state of Wisconsin. It was only beer and wine samples. So that was a big thing to get changed. You know, we sell a premium product. It's hard to ask people for $30 if they can't try something. So that's been a huge thing, and Guy kind of spearheaded that movement. That's Ross over there. He's our marketing director.
Hello.
He does a lot of those tastings and things like that out in the world. All kinds of things. But when Guy did release his first product, he started with vodka. Vodka's a really nice, easy, quick flip over product. You can make vodka in a week. Day to get the mash going, 3 days to ferment, day to distill it, day to filter it, day to water it down, day to bottle it. Since that first bottle of vodka, we've produced roughly 200,000 bottles of that Rayhorst vodka. More importantly, more fun, we now have about 35 different products all together on the shelves upstairs, so it's a wide range of booze. Between all those products last year, we did about 85,000 bottles of booze. Seems like a good chunk of liquor. What the big companies can do in a day takes us a year to do. Pretty all right with that. Quality over quantity, do it the right way, do it well. We're now joined in the state by about 25 other active legal distilleries in the state of Wisconsin, most of those producing in a pretty small fashion as well. In the nation, when Guy started out, we're talking about less than 50 distilleries in the nation in 2004. Now we're up to well over 2,000. So it's a good time to be drinking, a lot of options out there. Options are good. Always good to have our options. People are definitely specializing, more things, having fun, doing things that haven't been done ever. So it's a good time to be drinking. Questions before we get into, yes?
2. What are you drinking? Is that vodka?
Ooh, it's just gin on the rocks right here. Thanks, that allows me to take a sip, right?
The strobe light. You guys party down here?
We party. Oh, we party. We party hard.
Wow.
That's actually, that's pretty cool. That disco ball is hooked up to its own electric outlet switch. You know, it's not just one of these plug-in deals. We got a switch on the wall. That's when the party goes on.
Switch on the wall.
She likes the party.
Yeah, you like to get down. Yeah, no, this is actually usually this would just be seltzer, but I'm just coming from doing some shopping. Went to the Restaurant Depot and Woodman's to get some fruit and some juices and things like that. and I was a little fatigued, so I went about 2 ounces gin in here and some club soda on top of it, and that should get me into tour form quicker. And
So,
that's it.
are most of your customers only local, or do you sell over the line somewhere else?
So we are right now. We're just in Wisconsin. We took our product out into the U.S. market. We were in some states for a while, but it's tough to make an impact in other states. So we kind of pulled back from those relationships. We had a national distributor, so we were adding a 4th tier to the 3-tier system, which was certainly, your product goes up about $10, and then you're selling it, and there's no, in Wisconsin we can push it hard, and so we're in thousands of locations across Wisconsin, liquor stores, bars, grocery stores. We're out there, you name it, you can pretty much find it. If they don't have our product, tell them to bring it in. If they still don't, just don't go there.
I'm from Florida.
Oh, okay, Florida. We I don't think we were ever in Florida. We never made it down.
Vodka's a good seller down there, you
Yeah,
know?
vodka.
There's a lot of different vodka products.
Yeah, okay, good. Nice. Good vodka drinking. We got some good vodka. Any other questions before we get talking production?
Wow.
Cool. So we're all kind of on the same page. Well, a good way to look at a distillery is we're a brewery. We're just taking a step further, right? We own stills. We have stills. We distill. Distilling is separating out alcohol. But before you separate alcohol, you still need to create alcohol. That's what we're doing in our fermentation tanks, right? You've seen these if you've been to a brewery. Probably a lot bigger tanks than this, but a brewery, they ferment grain, they make beer. When you're a winery, you ferment fruit, you make wine. When you're a distillery, what you ferment is going to dictate what spirit you are making. So if we ferment fruit and we distill that, what are we making?
Wine.
But we distill
Liqueur.
it. What was that?
A liqueur.
A liqueur, not necessarily liqueur. Liqueur is really just a word for adding sugar. But what does Wisconsin drink more than any other state when it comes to liquor?
Beer.
Brandy.
Brandy, there we go. Fruit fermented and distilled is going to be brandy. What about sugarcane or sugarcane byproducts?
Rum.
Rum. What about cereal grains?
Gin.
Beer if you just ferment it, but if you distill it, then you're making?
Rye.
Rye or corn, or these are kinds of...
Whiskey.
Whiskey, there we go, whiskey. So cereal grains fermented and distilled is going to be whiskey. What about vodka? What do you make vodka?
Potato.
Grain, potato,
Grain. Corn.
corn, right? All these things. So vodka, any fermentable sugar works for vodka. Bottom line for vodka, vodka has to leave the still at 95% alcohol or higher, right? 95% ethanol, that's going to be really neutral. That's what defines vodka, is its neutrality. 95% alcohol is also a shit ton of alcohol, right? That is very, very,
That's why you got that?
That's why we got the disco ball, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we don't recommend drinking 95% alcohol. That's a little more than ever Coke too. That's just boozy booze. So eventually that's all gets diluted, but that cleans up, and that's why vodka is easy to drink, is because it's cleaned up a lot. It doesn't need to be barrel aged or anything. So when guys set up shop here, you want to make sure we have a nice local product with our products. So that vodka is going to be red wheat and water. We get that cooking rolling at around 180 degrees or so. At that point, it's just a starch and water. That starch is not a sugar yet, right? So we need to convert that starch to a sugar. We're going to use some enzymes. That'll happen around 150, 160 degrees. Bring it down a little, introduce those enzymes. That's when we convert that starch to a sugar, right? If we were talking about sugarcane, we just use molasses. That's already a sugar. You're good to go. As long as you got your sugar, you just need that second part of fermentation. You need yeast. Most strands of yeast die above 90 degrees, so get it below 90 degrees. We pitch our yeast in there. That's when fermentation starts. Fermentation is just our yeast eating that sugar, reproducing itself, producing CO2, with a byproduct of that being different types of alcohol. The one that our bodies semi-tolerate would be ethanol. So after about 72 hours, we're just left with a high alcohol hop with sweet beer. We got a bunch of bunch of ethanol, about 10-12% alcohol or so in there. And 10-12% alcohol, look at this container here. It's about 250 gallon container, 10% alcohol. We got about 25. That was not graceful at all.
I just let it go. I didn't even.
We got about 25 gallons or so of ethanol in here, right? Now that's all higher proof. So eventually that's going to need to be diluted, but that's about how much booze we have in there. We're going to take this tank then, and we're going to throw it into our stills. Questions on fermentation tank before we get into stills?
How do you heat this?
How do we heat it?
Steam?
Well, good question. Yeah, so it's going to be steam heated. The only tank over here that has a steam jacket is going to be this one on the far left. That's why it's elevated. And we just have a boiler in that room over there. And then this is a steam jacket. The rest of them have cooling jackets on them to bring down the temperature. But
So it goes
anytime we
from
need-
one, goes from one tank to the
Yep,
other? Is that what you-
exactly. So if we want to take something over, if we want, make it in there, bring the water over, it's hot enough, and then we're good to go.
So question,
Yep.
you heat it up in here, then you put it in one of those tanks and it stays in that tank? And then you do another batch in that tank?
Exactly.
You don't go from tank to tank? right?
Nope, just take hot water there, take it to this one, start that fermentation process. Get more hot water going, take it to this tank, start that fermentation process.
So what do you call that, what is that tank called? The boiler tank? or-
Yeah, that's a good name for it.
And these are your mash tanks?
Yeah, exactly. But we will do mash in that tank as well, the last tank. But, that's sitting for 3 days. So we want to get all 4 tanks filled, and then boom. Then we're good to roll.
So you got 250, 250, 250, 250, and
Yep.
that's one batch?
Essentially, yeah, about that.
And
that'll
that's-
produce roughly 1,000 bottles.
And that sits for 3 days?
Yep, about 72 hours, depending on the product. If we're making, most grain products are gonna be about 3 days of fermentation. If we're talking fruit or anything like that, fermentation is gonna be a little bit longer to get the alcohol high enough.
So your typical schedule is a 1-week schedule? You start it here and then by the end of the week it's finished?
Yeah, exactly. There's always gonna be a couple things going on. But yeah, essentially about that. And so, as soon as they start, they like to get this going over the weekend, right? When they're not in here, have it ferment.
And Monday be
Then
ready.
come in, Tuesday or so, they'll start distilling. Once they've got things out of the tank, they might start another batch and start distilling on Friday, so.
So your limit is 52 batches of 1,000 gallons, that's 52,000 gallons a year.
Roughly, yeah, roughly about that. We can get a little more than that just with, because once you're done here and you start that, you can start another batch here. So it's
Right.
not necessarily a blocked week, there's a lot of overlap, dips in and out of it, but yeah, kind of. Other questions fermentation wise? All right, cool. We'll take the massive couple steps over towards the stills. Remember to keep your distance. That's our little social distancing reminder, yeah. This is good size though. I feel like everyone, everyone.
That's a nice looking still.
I haven't done many of these tours since, the New World Order started. This is my, I think, third COVID tour. The other people had, the other times just 2 people. So this is, I'm figuring it out. But this is the still guy started the business on. This is a 65-gallon Holstein still. It's a German manufactured still. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. A lot of flexibility, which we'll talk about with this still. This still's also a pain in the ass, because it is a 65-gallon still. So you can imagine we go and fit a quarter one of those tanks in here at a time. That's about an hour and a half, 2 hours a run. That means, after that hour and a half, 2 hours, our distillers have to, open it back up, turn the heat down, pump it back up. A lot of steps. So when this still went on the market, someone down south was selling this for a nice little price. This still was kind of on the not used to used market for about $20,000 compared to the Holstein, which is around $100,000. This is a 250-gallon still, so we can fit a full one of those fermentation tanks in here at a time. A lot better for us to do those initial stripping runs where we take the mash over, and that's what that first initial run is called, is the stripping run, where you take that mash and wash over. These stills essentially function the same way. They're both steam heated. The Holstein has a steam jacket on the outside. The Hoga has a steam jacket on the inside. As soon as those heat and we have our mash in there, that's when different things start evaporating, right? 2 biggest things in that solution are going to be ethanol and water. Ethanol's boiling point 173 degrees, water's boiling point 212 degrees. If everything in there is heating to 180 degrees, all your ethanol is evaporating, your water isn't. That's the basis of distillation, separating things out by their boiling point. Now that evaporation is going to be met by a condensation over here, where we turn the gas back into a liquid, right? We can't sit at the bar huffing alcohol. It'd be fun if we could, but we can't. So we get it into a liquid form. That's going to be called the low wines after that initial stripping run. It'll be around 50-60% alcohol. Then we're going to take the low wines and we're going to throw it into this still over here, into the Holstein. And on the Holstein, with our doubling runs, that's the secondary runs name, the doubling runs are going to be doing different things with different products. So like I said, it's the sugar that dictates what spirit you're making. Within each spirit, there are certain parameters that need to be fulfilled when it comes to proof percentage of alcohol. We talked about vodka. Vodka legally has to lead the still at 95% ethanol or higher. Bourbon, though, bourbon has to lead the still at 80% alcohol or less. Now, which one of those things has more flavor, vodka or bourbon?
Bourbon.
Bourbon, a lot more flavor to bourbon. Vodka's gonna have more alcohol, but bourbon's got a lot more flavor. Those flavors are rougher though. That's why we barrel age that. It's coming rough off the still. You know, it's essentially what people would call moonshine. It's got some pop to it, but if you put that in a barrel, you round off some of those harsher flavors. They turn into some really beautiful notes. You can still have a little heat on there, but you're gonna round off those notes. Vodka, you don't need to do that to. It's already cleaned up. So if we're making a spirit like vodka, we're just gonna have it evaporate in this pot here, send it through both these rectifying columns. When we're doing that, it's going through all of these plates here, all these little portholes. And every one of these portholes, there's a copper bubble plate. Our alcohol is gonna evaporate, hit the bubble, condense, fall down, hit the plate right below it, and then evaporate to the next chamber. So slowly but surely, as we go up, we're getting a higher concentration of alcohol. That's how we are getting our vodka all the way up to 95% ethanol. If we're making a spirit like bourbon, we can just bypass this rectifying column here, lift all the plates here, so it's just a pot into a condensation tower. Just how that still over there functions. So you can have all kinds of setups for a still. As long as you have evaporation and condensation, you have a cycle of distillation. Bottom line, for this still, whatever ends up in this condensation tower, we're pumping cold water from the bottom to the top. Our gas is going to coil down. As it hits cold water, it's going to turn back into a liquid with good old gravity. It'll just come out of this little spigot right here. So we made about 85,000 bottles last year. For the most part, all of that coming out of that spigot. So a lot of booze, little spigot. Might be impressive, might not be. Depends how many spigots you see.
So you call this triple distilled or double distilled?
So, how many times something's distilled? That's a great question. How many times something's distilled is kind of, right, we see it on bottles all the time, right? Triple distilled, what does it really mean? So, it's not a number that is government regulated at all, triple distilled, double distilled. It is technically our product. If we're talking about each molecule going liquid gas, liquid gas, liquid gas, that would be a distillation. So we could say ours is, every one of these plates, it's for sure another distillation. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can say that many times. But how many times something's distilled doesn't mean it's a better product. When you're talking about times it's cleaned up, essentially, is what you're meaning. It does not infer that something is superior. I think one of the better examples of saying that, and this will be a little slightly confusing, but talking about double versus triple distilled. You have most of, and when I say most, I'll say a lot of Irish whiskeys are triple distilled, right? They're cleaned up more. That's why is, Jameson so easy to shoot? It's pretty cleaned up and then it's barrel aged. So it doesn't have as much gusto to it. Whereas scotches are generally double distilled. They're going to have a lot more going on with them, a lot more of a flavor profile there. Yes, scotches are generally getting aged a lot longer, but even as a whole separate, that's a good little way to look at that. Now, most people would argue scotches are better, so because you're distilling less, but then you've got to barrel age it to make those flavors have some finesse to them. So that's kind of the difference. It doesn't mean one is better than the other.
So the more it goes through that distillery there, the finer it tastes? Is that what you're saying?
The more times it's distilled, no. So the more times it goes through, that's just how we're getting up to 190 proof.
I see.
However you get to 190 proof,
Becomes more alcohol the
it's
more it goes
just
down.
a marketing number, that started with one company in the 60s or someone in marketing, Don Draper type walks down. What are you guys doing there? Oh, well, we distilled 3 times. Ooh, triple distilled. Let's put that on the bottle. That's
So what's the hours that the distillery is taking place? I mean, you're doing these tours right now.
Yeah, tell you the truth, usually they'd be working. I don't know where they are right now. I don't know if they're kind of taking the day off or whatnot. They're aimed, they come in early and they want to poke their heads out. If they get out by 3, they're pretty happy with themselves. But some days they'll be in here till 5. But yeah, some days they'll be 3. They're Monday to Friday guys. They work banker's hours. They get out a little early. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other questions on the stills, guys?
This still looks like it's harder to control than this one. I've worked with a jacketed on the outside. It holds the temperature better. This you got to watch really carefully,
Yeah,
right?
you bet. Yeah, exactly. This one, like I said, a little.
You set and leave that pretty much.
Yeah.
This one.
But that one, yeah, a
You
little
gotta
bit
watch.
of Wild Cowboy. But as long as it's evaporating, you're distilling. So
These
as long
things
as-
can blow, I
Yeah.
guess, if you walk away and just leave them go.
Yeah, you got gotta watch them both a little bit, but they should maintain their flow. Let's check out some barrels over here. All right. These are barrels. There are really barrels anywhere you look in this room. We are running out slowly but surely out of space for barrels. We have over time been putting more barrels away, and that's kind of what you'd expect from a young distillery. If you look at the market, a lot of young distilleries, they release vodka gin right out of the gate because you don't really need to age them. You can just push it, start making money, and we've kind of taken that same form, but we're not that young anymore. We've matured into a distillery that's been open for 16 years now. So it's kind of exciting for us that we're feeling like we're catching up to the game and getting a lot of barrels inside. Now what happens in the barrel, a little bit of magic, art, and science all kind of rolled into one. Starts out with the cooper. They're the guy or gal making the barrel. We don't do any cooperage on site. We get our barrels from a few different places, but we just started getting them from a newer place. We were getting them from Kelvin Cooperage. I'll tell you where, I'll look at the back of a barrel. What does this one say? Yeah, these guys. Zach. Yeah, that's the new one up there. There you go. New brokerage, Cooperage we're getting barrels from. Yeah, what the Coopers do, they take staves, the stave just being one piece. That's conveniently placed right there. This is one stave. They put a bunch of staves together and then use the metal bands to lock it into place. It's all waterlogged, that's why it doesn't leak, but before they do that, they char the inside of the barrel. They're not just adding a char taste, they're essentially caramelizing the sugar. So when you have fluctuation in temperature and humidity, that's when the pores in the wood open up, allow the alcohol in, out. It's going to garner all that flavor, all that character, and that color. Everything's leaving the still colorless. It's the barrel that's inflicting any kind of color. I would not advocate to pass that around, but,
Nice smell
we're not
there.
passing things around. Anybody else want to look?
Touch with your eyes, not with your hands.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that camera's showing to the feds.
No, we don't see.
CDC's looking, who's following regulations.
This is a protest. Everything's okay.
Everything's a protest. That's fair enough. But yeah, so that's what the Cooper's doing there. We've got all different kinds of product in this room right now. Over in that corner room, we got some of our kind of weird things that are in trial, and we'll eventually release some really exciting things. We got some banana brandies over there, some beer schnapps that we've never released before, a lot of gins over there. Bulk of this room, though, is going to be whiskey. And when it comes to whiskey, we're up against the big dogs that have been doing this for a lot longer than us. Like I said, we're starting to feel like a nice, mature distillery, but these guys have been doing it a long time.
Yeah, but you could do things they can't do.
True.
'Cause you got the flexibility.
Exactly, and that's kind of one of the benefits. So when we started out, Guy looked at it. We were too young. We didn't want to release white whiskey, right? That's a young distillery's option, white whiskey, or you just completely source something. And we didn't necessarily want to do either of those. So instead of doing neither of those, we kind of did both of them. And that's what our Kinnickinnick whiskey is over there. You can see that big banner of Kinnickinnick whiskey. For that, we source a little bit of bourbon, or we were, I should say, when we started out, we were sourcing some bourbon, blending it with our own malt and our own rye. There's a product to get us going until eventually we'd have our own bourbon, our own rye, and the bourbon and that Kinnickinnick whiskey would be made completely in this house. So now we're up to that point. About 2.5 years ago, we introduced our Still and Oak bourbon and our Still and Oak rye. They're phenomenal products. We're going to try a little of those today. Just really, really easy drinking whiskey. I'm a big fan of the rye whiskey. That's just... Yeah, it's pretty great, but like you said, we've been doing all kinds of small batch whiskeys, things like that to get ourselves going, but now we have this continual flow of good bourbon, good rye. Questions about barrels?
So you don't source anything anymore.
No. We're to our own bourbon now. Is the just about there. We're kind of in the transition spot right now.
So but that's 10-year aged, right?
The which barrel? The
The
bourbon over here?
Mechanic whiskey, the Kinnickinnick.
The Kinnickinnick is not 10 years age. So we do have a single malt upstairs that's 10 years old.
Yeah.
Kind of similar label. That's our Menominee Valley single malt. That's 10 years old.
But that was sourced. Some of
No, that was made in-house. So
Okay.
that was, when we started out, that's one of the things, hey, let's make a barrel of this, set it aside for 10 years. That's a good way to
All right, when we push that out, that should generate some nice income when we get for 10 years from now. So it's nice to have those little things, but to produce a mass amount of that would have been a tough thing. So it's
Yeah.
a nice thing to do a couple, but that was completely done in-house. So it's just a little, the only thing we sourced a little bit for was that the bourbon for the Kinnickinnick whiskey in the beginning, but slowly make that transition over.
So how many bottles per barrel?
How many bottles per barrel? Good question. So these are 53-gallon barrels. You know, a little bit of higher proof in there. You're talking around 250, 300 barrels. It depends on a lot of different factors for how strong you lose alcohol in there. So it depends on how strong the spirit was when you put it into the barrel, how strong you're going to be bottling it at. So a lot of different factors when it comes to a barrel.
So just a question. One batch of this goes through there and it makes what, 1 barrel?
Ooh, that's math. Ooh, okay. We're gonna go. All right, so we got about 1,000 gallons.
750 milliliter bottles.
Yeah, so it's gonna be around 1,000 gallons here, and then that's only gonna be around 10% alcohol. So we've got.
So I'm not converting ounces to milliliters.
Yeah.
I'm using
One
the
tank, we'll do
calculator.
one tank, 25 gallons of that, double proof. It'll be around 50 gallons per tank is what we get. If something goes in at a really high proof, but we're not putting it as high. So yeah, around 1 tank, 1 barrel or so.
So, oh, okay. So you have 4 barrels
Or I
per
should
run.
say, yeah, roughly, somewhere in there.
And it looks clear. It's clear.
It's clear, it's all clear.
Give or take a distill party or two.
Yeah, exactly. There's a little bit of booze.
Wow, that's only 4 barrels per run. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work, a lot of work. Other questions, barrel-wise? We're gonna take one last little stop down here before you head back to AC. Anybody else hot down here, or is this a nice temperature? Maybe I'm just running hot today. I shouldn't say that though, huh? Don't jump.
And how many bottles do they get out of a barrel?
Well, this is your conversion to milliliters. So if you got 250 gallons,
Yeah. But 1 barrel, just 1 barrel, 53 gallons into 750 milliliters. And he says he loses some, so probably 50
3
gallons.
evaporation.
I've always wanted a little air freshener on the car, you know, one of the little tree things that
53
smells like bourbon. So an officer pulls you over,
gallons
well, officer,
to
it's my-
ml.
it's my-
It's about 200,000, 626.
They're probably 750.
Smells amazing in there.
It's not good if you're not smelling either these days. All right, we got our little bottling line here. So this is our bottling line.
267, and there's 12 in a case.
We do everything else in-house.
So probably a pallet.
As well, bottle the stuff in
Divided by 12 is 22.
Any product we're getting ready in that
And
big
it's
22
old
on a pallet.
stainless steel container in that thing over there. It's been at really high proofs up until now. So we're gonna dilute it. Now's the time for dilution. We add that water in.
There you
and
go.
then we
That's
pretty
what they do with
I
the water.
should say before we add our water, we do a filtration. Vodka, if vodka leaving the still, we're gonna filter for 26 hours through charcoal, get all the impurities out of there. Anything leaving a barrel, we're just gonna do a light plate filtration. We don't wanna filter too heavy, right? We wanna keep all that
Keep the
flavor. We
tannins.
worked so hard for that flavor. So we don't wanna filter that out. And then we dilute it and then hook it up to this machine. We bottle 4 bottles at a time. Hand roll on the label, hand put on a foil top there, put it in a box, tape the box closed, away it goes to the cage till the distributors come and collect it. You can see all of our pallets of booze there. There's a couple pallets ready to go out the door today. That's why that's a little empty over there. But like we were talking about distribution earlier, you know, where
Nice smell. Very nice.
Oh, we're not drinking.
This is made with juniper?
Juniper, yes.
Military.
Juniper corn is the main distillate, and then the juniper and all the other potato things are added, and then we redistill it.
That's my rose petal cucumber Hendrix. Oh god, I love the smell of it too. Smells like. It almost smells like Hendrix.
That's strong. Woo! This is stronger than the vodka, yeah?
Yep, 88 proof. Good tongue you got there. Next thing we're gonna try is a
No botanical there. This is just the grain.
I see.
So it's bad.
But now,
Nice golden color.
knowledge is just a hobby.
Single malt Scotch, 10-year aged. Nice, nice. Good flavor.
Much better, right?
Very, very, very smoky. Very smoky. It's a little young. Good flavor.
Well, we just paid it off, so time to jack it back.